So now you have the history from how we got to this point, where we are now, and a little bit of where we go from here. So I think we have a few minutes now, which is very cool, to have an interaction now with the audience with some questions. All I ask is, I'm hoping we have a lot of questions. Keep them fairly clear and fairly short so that we can cover as many as possible.
If you want to verify a lot of the research, if you go to the New York Times archives and go in Quindaro, Kansas, you will find probably 70 to 90 articles about the Quindaro site. Then J-Star also has a huge volume of articles about Quindaro, as well as ProQuest, so that you could do independent review and authentication. And the reason why the site is called Pompeii, Kansas, because like there are lost cities, ghost towns throughout Kansas, and they all have names like Atlantis, Spartacus, Troy, the lost cities of Kansas, and Quindaro was already identified as a Pompeii of Kansas. And so it is, when the Kansas City Star came in July the 16th of 1987, and the TV people came with the helicopters, the New York Times did the article, like Dr. Whitehead said, August the 20th of 1987 on page 20A. I'll remember forever. We circulated it a million times to throw in people's attention or in their eyes about the site's importance. And John Reynolds, who used to be our chief archaeologist for the Kansas State Historic Society in Topeka, he said that the site was as Americana as the apple pie and American flag. So when we have different ceremony events, and the church that I belong to, we do a Harvester's Food Pantry. Thank God for the food pantry, because a lot of times they're bringing that apple pie, and if we have an event and it's close to the time frame and I'm a Navy vet, I'll throw an American flag down inside that apple pie, and that's the appreciation for John Reynolds' work in the Kansas State Historic Society, and trying to make people understand that this site is not just a, because I thought all black Underground Railroad early on, it's not even an American site. It is an international, global site, because our people were not considered African American. They were savage beasts and held in enslavement. And then you have the people from Scotland and England, Germany. This is an international site. It's not a around the way kind of corner. And so I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. Thank you.
Okay, so any other questions?
Right here. Over here.
Okay.
In front of you.
Yeah. All right.
I had a question about the ruins themselves. I've read about the tunnel, which is going to be the most, to some of us, the most alluring aspect. And it's confusing to me. Does the tunnel lead directly to the Missouri River, or does it go to the creek?
Well, that tunnel, what that was, basically, it was a drainage tunnel that was constructed to basically drain Quindaro Creek under Park's warehouse. That location, that warehouse was right next to the levee right there. You've got a very narrow valley, so the actual number of structures that could have fronted the levee or the steamboat dock there was really very limited. So that tunnel was constructed basically to channel the runoff from Quindaro Creek underneath that warehouse. So the descriptions of the people being in it say, well, if we went back in this tunnel, it led down into the sands along the river, is the description. And people seem to indicate that the reports of the travel, they went some distance down into that tunnel.
Just wanted to add, there is a reference to why the tunnel was built in the first place. Abelard Guthrie, in the summer of '58, writes that as a result of heavy rains and so forth, the foundation on the rear of Park's warehouse was starting to give way, and the back rear wall was cracked. That is why that tunnel was built. Because there was runoff coming down that steep hillside and basically hitting the back ends of those warehouses along Levy's.
And that was one of the most substantial buildings on the site, was it not? So it would have a huge hydrological pressure against the foundation.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yes, I was wondering if anybody knows what the total excavation would cost.
Do what?
Total cost of it.
What was the cost of an excavation, total one?
What he did.
Yeah. You've got a series of excavations there, but you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of probably, $300,000 or $400,000.
How much?
Probably $300,000 or $400,000. That's the field work of those. And basically, the lab work, right after the report, that was never really completed. But it was done in a series of phases. You had an initial intensive survey, a phase 3 testing program, and then these phase 4 investigations, which were, the majority of which were completed at the time that the Browning Ferris abandoned their proposed landfill project.
But it's fair to say
And to point out, two on this, that funding that work was funded by Browning Ferris Industries.
Okay, I mean, from this point on to totally excavated and dig up everything and see what's there.
You mean how much it would cost to do additional work?
Yes.
What I'd like to stress is what's really most important there is probably trying to preserve what we've excavated, you see, and the probably stabilization or rebuilding some of the ruins that have been collapsed. That's probably more important. And you're talking really about quite a bit of money to do that. I don't have a figure in mind, really, but you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
But it would be fair to say that it would entail clearing a lot of the brush away again because it's grown back, and then seeing what you have and doing some stabilization on the...
That's what that would entail, yes.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Wait a minute. Hold on just 1 second, if I could just throw out, because my brain is crashing, I'll forget. The value of clearing the brush and not having a consistent archaeological management consultant team on board would be disastrous, because they did that before with the Save America's Treasures grant through the former First Lady Hillary Clinton's initiative to assist with historic preservation. And without continuous ongoing maintenance of archaeological stabilization, it creates huge problems. And this is something that I don't have a college degree, but just visiting with a variety of professionals in the field, this is why the site is in the disintegration and deterioration that it is, because it has to have the nutrient of people that know how to do stabilization and keep the grounds, because the Parks and Recreation have been doing the best that they can through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. But they don't have archaeological management. That's additional funding. So I just wanted to throw that out because my brain impression, that's a very good question. And so I'll just stop right there.
That's where I was going. I was asking anybody that does a study to see what it would take to do this whole thing. And I'm not throwing out the preservation of anything. I'm not talking about destroying anything. I'm talking about just bringing it up to where we can do something with it. Where you want to rebuild the structure.
Yeah, I'm not trying to cut you off, but that's exactly where we're going. In fact, in the next, the very next panel, we're going to talk about where do we go. And so I just want to make sure everybody who wants to has an opportunity to ask a question. It was an excellent question.
Excuse me, there is an acquisition feasibility study that the Interior Department conducted that the state used to require 10 signatures, and when they understood that the Quindaro project would be coming before them, they increased it to 1,000 signatures, and they had to be registered, certified, eligible voters from across the state of Kansas, and we exceeded and had something like almost 7,000 registered voters. And a lot of the people that signed the petitions, they weren't registered certified voters, because we had just any and everybody helping us to register, people going to Topeka or Wichita or Lawrence for a workshop to get people to sign our petition. They bought in the acquisition feasibility study. It cost $25,000 to conduct, and they do have a plan in there. And it is very reasonable, but they also say at the close of the report, every year that you don't do an action, it's an inflation factor of 5%. There used to be a black congressman in Kansas City, Missouri named Alan Wheat. His staff used to help us understand a lot of the different things, and former Congresswoman Jan Myers, they would help us to decode. They would call us from DC and from their Kansas City offices and give us pointers on what we needed to do. And before we go to the next panel, the Arabia steamboat over in Kansas City, Missouri was excavated on the Sorter Farm, just right upstream from the Quindaro site. And the guy was working for Larry Schmits. I can't remember his name. I want to say Dr. Rex Walters. He came, we decorated John Brown at a sunrise ceremony because we had prepared to have a Quindaro obsequies, a death to the site, because they were going to poison the entire water in the history. They were going to put the dump right up to the John Brown Memorial, so we had a sunrise ceremony, and Mr. Collins, who was another veteran, he got his ladder, and I climbed up there and put a flag around John Brown. And when Dr. Rex Walters showed up and saw the John Brown flag, he wept and cried, and he quit within a matter of days. And then he went and worked on the steamboat Arabia, because he said he would not use his professional credentials and expertise and education to prepare such an important site for a toxic waste dump.
I think, yeah, please.
I've got a question. One of the speakers yesterday said that the town really had a relevance between 1958 and 59, and sort of declined after that. But by the number of structures, and prior to coming to this, I thought that the lifespan of the town was much longer. So I was wondering if someone could speak to over what period of time were these structures built, and over what period of time was it inhabited?
There were still original residents living in the Quindaro area in the 1870s. What basically happened was, by the time of the Civil War, the business section of the town had been largely abandoned. A lot of the residents had left, but there were still a fair number of the original residents living there. The two original churches, the Methodist Church and the Congregational Church, were still active. You still had the two schools, the black school and the white school. But virtually all of that was still ongoing was up on top of the hill, away from the original business section. It was the original business section that died, but there were still people living in Quindaro, a number of businesses still in Quindaro, but everything tended to shift south to the top of the hill where it's much more reasonable, and down towards what's now Leavenworth Road, which was the Leavenworth Road at the time, the road that led to Leavenworth, and that was the actual southern limit of the platted area of the town.
Yeah, one other thing to remember, I'll make this real quick, just to tell me if I'm wrong, but the town actually got started being built in 56. It was incorporated in 57, and during this time, if you remember from the talks yesterday, we were having a number of constitutional conventions, actually four. We actually had two different governments taking place in Kansas territory, and the whole battle was whether or not Kansas was going to come in as a free state or a slave state. And one of the formations, or the reasons for the formation of Quindaro was it was a port for free staters. At one time, it was providing almost 2/3 of the merchandise that was coming into southern Kansas. Newspaper presses were coming in through Quindaro and going to Emporia and different places like that. Quindaro had two of its own steamboats, because the other steamboats would not stop there. There was a blockade of free staters. Well, as Leavenworth became or anti-slave, as Wyandotte became anti-slave, it became a bigger city and became the county seat. As Atchison became anti-slave. All of these had been pro-slave before, and as the steamboat company saw that, well, we can't blockade this anymore, we're losing trade, Quindaro lost its uniqueness or its necessity for being. And as the panic of '57 spread to the west, as the war came, as the newspaper shut down so that there was less advertising for some of these businesses, all of these things sort of combined. And then I think any one of these gentlemen would tell you that there was fear of the ruffians coming across, and the military came into the town and started tearing the town apart to use for wood. And
Hold on. Okay, so now, all that, he has the right to have that view of information. And it didn't matter if they had found a single foundation to the older black African-American community who helped make. They said that the people found freedom there, that the soil was stained with the blood. When they talked about bleeding Kansas, it percolated right there. Later it was leaked and said that they found the foundations, and they had found Civil War soldier medallions and buttons. People inside the community need this site more than ever to help sensitize and improve race, class, and cultural relationships. And how we do that through meaningful employment opportunities. Some people in the community don't need a job. Some people are so skilled they need the opportunity to have the training for entrepreneurship development training and how to do the books with the CPAs and business management. And they can go a long way in helping to improve race, class, and cultural relationships. You can't just do it through a seminar. Now, the first Kansas Colored were the first to serve and first to die in the American Civil War. You just saw the film, some of you who hung out yesterday, they won 2 Emmys. You know, the first Kansas Colored, the second Kansas Colored, we have a portion of a mass grave up here next to the Wyandotte Indian Casino, that they're buried right there. We haven't even begun to scratch the surface into the enormity. And how you sensitize and improve race and class and cultural relationships is making sure that people that are indigenous to the community are a part of that and not allowed to be I didn't get the memo that said that I needed to be a passive observer for the rest of my entire life. I didn't get the memo in the flyer. Okay, and so how we cut down on crime and violences to engage people into legal opportunities to earn a living. Frederick Douglass does what does every black man want? That powerful. It's not so much the theme of agitate, 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 but he who controls the quill also controls history. Frederick Douglass, we need to be actively involved. So the people are too busy feeling good about life, and every 2 weeks they can have a legal paycheck, or every month like regular people. We're not allowed to be in the fullness of life just being passive observers. And when the site does get to be a National Historic Landmark, and some of the Interior Department people, they aren't here, some of them have retired. This was explained to them before. We need to have jobs. They say if you want to be a part of the site, you have to volunteer because no one's going to hire people. Well, they're hiring people to build the legends. They hire people to build and to restore the downtown Kansas City, Missouri. We can't continue with the thing that we have now with the deprivation of life. People are dying and getting killed to say that the opiates, and there was something at the Kaufman Foundation, we were talking about economic development, so I had to say, okay, so the whites are dying of opiates. Blacks are also dying of opiates, okay? And so how you transfer school violence, we have to redo everything that we've been doing the wrong way, another way. And so just don't turn your heart off and say that the site doesn't matter, because right now, more than ever, our country needs to be trying to come together.
I don't think that anyone's saying that doesn't,
No, you didn't, but I just wanted to throw that out because in a few minutes you're going to go to another panel, and I want to have the opportunity to say that this site means so very much to the future, and we're the people now to help to put in place the infrastructure. That's what I was trying to get. And
Well,
I cannot thank you enough.
I would just like to underscore the fact that there is so much intensity around this topic, and the whole purpose, and I think Marvin buys into this too, is where do we find that intersection of consensus and cooperation with all the different communities to move forward after 30 years after this excavation. And that's
Okay,
where I'm coming from.
one other thing too is that,
Can we get one other question before we go to one other thing?
well, yeah, you can, but I'm going to throw this out there because in preparing and going to the National Archives Records Administration and being able to have access to the New York Times online archive on Quindaro for free because there's no budget or salary or opportunity. Okay, August the 23rd of 1903, there was a thing called Western University in full swing, right? Before it was Quindaro Freedmen's University, but August the 23rd of 1903, there was an article that said dynamite under the train. Someone said dynamite under the train from Union Station in Kansas City, Missouri, and it was to go off at the Western University at Quindaro. And there were no one perished, and it blew out some of the railroad tracks. So I'm saying this to say, we have violence in school today. It's not new, but we have to find unique, more creative remedies. And some of the most intelligent people, I mentioned some of the stuff around the wall. All these people got all this high education from Freedom's Frontier, National Heritage Area, and the libraries, and the archaeologists, and the historians. We can find some solutions that are viable to be inclusive. And so that I couldn't thank you enough again.
We've got about 3 or 4 minutes now. Let's try to get as many as we can. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Good morning. My name is America Patton. I'm one of the children of Rufus Hartley, the world's first jazz bagpipe player. And I moved to Kansas City in 1987 from North Philly to Wyandotte County. And I grew up in the area, not really knowing too much about the history of the area. But I would later go to Arrowhead Middle School and later graduated from Jackson Harmon High School and went to Coffeyville Community College, where I played football with Brandon Jacobs from the Duke Giants, where I lived with all teammates. Then I later went to McPherson College, where I got interested in music and history and so forth. But I came back to the community to initiate teaching at Washington High School history department, where I successfully implemented the first ever up and running African American history course, along with a racial and ethnic studies course. I did face a lot of backlash in the community from different people from doing that, and a lot of discrimination through the district. I did leave the district and go to Missouri for 2 years, Bishop Tobin High School there. I later came back to the district in support roles. And then I phased into AmeriCorps, which I'm AmeriCorps alumni. I'm currently a long-term substitute teacher at Richard Warren Middle School in Leavenworth.
What's this question?
My question is pertaining to what is the true story to the closing of Western University. The information that I have read was very conflicting, and I was kind of perplexed because I like to connect the dots like John Paul Franklin, who's my favorite historian, who was born in Princetonville, Oklahoma in 1915. I was kind of perplexed because I was looking at the closing of the university. I wanted to know, why did so many other universities get a chance to stay open in the state of Kansas? I know we were divided. Everyone knows we were divided over slavery. That was a big issue. But why was that particular university, how come it was literally what's the true story behind it. I hear articles that I read, research that I've been doing, mentioned research libraries, so forth, very confident. But when I looked at Bishop Vernon's original letters that he was writing to Bishop Gray, and when he was out of town doing missions work, he mentioned his letters, and this was also letters between the bishop's wives back and forth, saying that they don't even like the name of the university. They want the name of the university to cease. So my whole thing is, what is the true story about that, and what can we do to try to highlight, tell the true story?
If you have some time afterwards, I'll sit down and talk to you about that, because it's extremely complicated. It does involve Bishop Vernon, Bishop Gray, Bishop Ransom. It involves the state. It involves, in fact, the entire black newspaper association across the country. It involves the general conference. It's a very interesting, intriguing, and complicated story that you could not summarize in 1 minute. But if you have time afterwards, I will sit down and go through with you, and I'll show you where you can see all the documents at the Spencer Library. If you're really interested,
I'll give you all the documents. I think the original letters.
that's because it's a good question, and what it brings up is the fact that there is,
Not all of us, a lot of
as Marvin was saying, there is information out there all over the place, and I'm trying to move this forward because the issue is there is information, there has been efforts, there has been collaboration, and now we're at a point where we can move forward. So I'm going to kind of look at the future, and I'd like to hear from Councilman Sharp, because he's from the
And they also
Missouri side.
would be closed because the World War, correction, in the war, they went to go, the male population. Quindaro was a ROTC facility, and they trained military personnel. You can see pictures from the National Archives and from the Library of Congress with the black men being trained, and the women were being trained into nursing and education. They couldn't sustain the university with the state funds because a lot of people had to go do their duty to protect the country that we love, right? And that
Councilman? Yeah, Councilman? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm John Sharp, over from the Missouri side. I was a former councilman and state legislator over there, although I lived in KCK for a while. But I'm here because when I was young, and I was young once, I was a reporter for the Kansas City newspaper. Of course, that newspaper was good to dust, but it used to be a daily software publication here in Wyandotte County. And back then, this was 1970, there was some discussion in the community about what was going to happen in that area. And I became aware of the history of the old town of Quindaro, and I told my editors I'd like to write something about that. I'd like to go down and see what's there. And they said, oh, there's nothing there. It's all gone away. You can't see anything. Well, I said, well, let's find out. And I went there, and we did a two-part article, and I couldn't find the first one. This is the second one. This was published December 6, 1970. And as you can see, these are it has the pictures of the two front corners. I identified that building as originally intended to be a distillery, and that the temperance-minded citizens of Quindaro didn't want a distillery, it became a brewery. But you could see the two corners standing, and I actually went down into the basement of that, which you could still enter. It's kind of filled in, but it had a stone arched roof. But there were a lot of remnants of the buildings there in the 1970s. But I don't think, from the people I talked to then, folks that lived around there, and many of the African American organizations in town really were familiar with Quindaro. A lot of folks, they'd forgotten about it. They didn't know about it in the first place. And to me, this was just a shame, since such a historic site that had such impact not only on the region, but on the whole nation. And I walked through, saw the various foundations, walked down to the river, and you could see where the boats docked because some of the pilings are still there. There was just an old corrugated metal shed between the tracks and the river. And somebody apparently was living there because you could see clothes up on this clothesline. I couldn't see anybody, but I realized there was a lot there, and it was just a terrible waste not to recognize this. And I think that holds true today. This site should be a national landmark. It should be a national historic site because it has significance not only to this area, but to the whole nation.
And can the city of Kansas City help us with that?
I'm not on the council anymore, but I sure would be glad to talk to my friends over there.
Great. Do we have time for one or two more, please? Okay, one last question from someone?
Okay, one last one. Gentlemen, at the Historic Society, we were saying if you charged for the artifacts being kept there, it would be about $58,000. And then you talked about all of the people who like to get the artifacts for their presentations. I was wondering, and all of the people who come there to see the artifacts. I was wondering if maybe there was some balance there in terms of what that cost would be. You understand my question?
No, I'm afraid no. You mean charge to see the artifacts?
No. I'm asking, is it worth it to keep?
Oh.
So the $58,000 charge was stated, very first thing. And I was just wondering, in terms of its value to the museum, is there some balance?
That's a good question. I wish I had an easy answer to that. I think it's important to maintain a artifact collection that's as significant as this one is in terms of where it comes from. But you raise a good question. Is the benefit that we get from curating those artifacts and what we would typically charge for that, is there a benefit that's accrued? I can't tell you that for sure. Right now, probably it seems off balance. But in the future, there might be a chance for further analysis of those, and it might add more to the story. I also want to emphasize that we didn't charge that amount, but that's what we would typically charge. We did this one without a cost. That is a good complex question, and actually let's talk afterwards. Okay, one very last question.
Hi, I'm Marvin.
Very last.
I am just becoming familiar with the Quindaro. I'm working on a small art project that's funded by the National Endowment for the Arts, and it's actually a collaboration between KCK, Wyandotte County, and KCMO, Office of Culture and Community Services. And I'm just doing some storytelling and walking tours on different historical sites. And I didn't know what to expect by coming to the Quindaro Symposium, so this is a really interesting experience for me. But I'm wondering what you as a historical society, what you as white men would like to provide to the community. So I heard you say something of kind of like quote-unquote cooperative relationships. But I'm kind of curious about the dynamic of collaboration and what the Historic Society might be able to do to help histories be told through Black and Native voices.
If you want to take that, Bob? I'll take parts of that. We have provided federal pass-through funds regulated by us for a preservation plan as part of the planning for the national landmark. So we have been working toward having a greater acknowledgement of the site through those two things at least. I think we also had some involvement in the Save America's Treasures grant that came through. But also, I view the role of the Kansas Historical Society as also providing access to those records to people and making sure that they can have that. In terms of taking an active role, I think that's what your question is. I don't know that we're so much doing that as an institution, but I think individually, like participating in the symposium and working with others, that we do have a role in that. We're only one component. Does that address your question?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of just relating back to your statement about the quill, the
Yes,
saying,
Frederick
that who
Douglass.
holds the quill writes the history.
Yes.
And it's just, how do we, as, you know, or how do you as educated historians begin to empower a new frame of reference to historical documentation and the voices that are telling the stories that are, show the values of the community, rather than just one set perspective of Western worldview?
Yeah, I really agree with that, but I don't feel that we are trying to be or acting as the interpreters. As I pointed out in the very brief presentation, we're trying to make primary resources and objects available for multiple interpretations.
Yeah.
And making them available as much as possible. Not everyone has access to the web, but you can be in Calcutta and look at this information. We're trying to get as much of that out as possible.
I just think it could be really important to possibly take an educational standpoint and how you could embed yourself into the voices of the youth and the active voices of the community to begin to build those relationships.
Yeah, I think we have.
So part of the answer to that is the public library in Kansas City, Kansas. Back in 93 or 94 was a grant received from the National Endowment for the Humanities for the University of Kansas to do oral traditional history interviews. And in recent months, the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library has been doing oral traditional history interviews like every 2 to 3 months at the main library here in Minnesota. And so I just wanted to throw that out there is the effort in motion.
They're actually doing
And we
it
need help
downstairs
transcribing the interview.
Yeah. Quick question, quick answer to you though. The material is there. I invite you to come, interpret it, and add to the interpretation. We can all tell you where it's at. We're looking for that joint effort. We're also, in the next panel, looking at how do we bring all this stuff together so that everyone in the community has access. That's what I mean by collaboration. It's not held by any one group. It's out there for everyone to look at and work together with. And we have here from the Whitehead.
And everyone's getting called on except me. I've been very patient.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Sharon?
May I have a response to the question, Reverend, about the cost? I don't know if you were being rhetorical in that comment or not about the cost of $58,000. It's about the preservation of heritage. That's priceless. And when it comes to people of color, we've paid tax dollars for years and years in this country. But when it comes to our history and our heritage being preserved by state-funded institutions, they haven't done it. So $58,000 is chump change for the legacy, for our ancestors, for all people, history to preserve, and so the next generation and the next generation can know it. The National African American Museum in Washington, D.C. Do you know where the seed money came from for that museum? The seed money for that museum came from the Civil War soldiers, the USCT, who had deposited money in the Freedmen's Bank. When the banks collapsed, they were not able to give the money back to the soldiers. Their money stayed with the federal government. The interest was calculated. That's where the seed money came from, the fantastic museum that we all have the ability to go and see to this day. So $58,000, our people been paying taxes for years. That's chump change.
We're going to, in terms of, we do have to hear from the White House.
I wanted to indicate that the collaboration is happening between Freedom's Frontier and the Old Quindaro Museum. We donated a number of items so that the history, both from the Native American perspective and from the African American perspective, can be told. If you haven't been to the Old Quindaro Museum, you need to get out there. They're about ready to get a new roof to the site. But my chief is one of the representatives on Freedom Frontier, and there's quite a few African American leadership represented on that group too. And the hope is that the entire story, we all have a piece of that puzzle, and the entire story will be told.
Well, I think this is a good time to take a break and roll into the next one. Thank everyone for taking part in this and seeing the intense interest, the passion, and the need to move forward with this. Thank you very much.